You're listening to episode 48 of Liz's Healthy Table.
Looking for a healthy new way to feed your family without the hassle and hype? Welcome to Liz's Healthy Table, where your host, registered dietitian nutritionist Liz Weiss, serves up fresh and flavorful recipes with a tasty side of science, good nutrition, and fun. Are you and your family ready for some wholesome food that tastes great too? Don't change that dial. Your food adventure starts here.
Welcome to the podcast, everyone. Today's show is all about probiotics. What are they? Why can taking the right probiotic supplement be good for your health? And how do you know if a supplement is even right for you and your family? My guest today is Antony Thomas, Ph.D. He is Director of Scientific Affairs at Jarrow Formulas. This is a long-standing dietary supplement company. I know them well. I've been using their products for years. Antony has an impressive and extensive background in nutrition science. He earned his Bachelor of Science in Nutrition, Food Science, and Dietetics from California State University, Northridge, and later his doctorate in nutritional biotechnology from the University of California at Davis. So I met Antony back in January at a conference where he gave an eye-opening lecture on probiotic supplements and the importance of reading labels. Now, it turns out that not all probiotics are created equal. The key to choosing the right supplement for you or a family member is to look for specific probiotic strains. And these are strains that have been studied for their specific health benefits. So let me give you a personal example of what I'm talking about here. And not to get too personal, but for many years, I suffered from UTIs. These are urinary tract infections. And I was on and off antibiotics. I was really at my wit's end. And so I went to see a urologist, and together we talked about having me try a probiotic supplement to bring balance back to my body. And so I hightailed it over to Whole Foods once we had that discussion, and I purchased a bottle of Jarrow Formulas Femdophilus, indicated for vaginal and urinary tract health. Now, if you read the label, you'll see that this particular supplement has two strains of clinically proven probiotics. They're called Lactobacillus rhamnosus, GR1, and Lactobacillus reuteri, RC14. Sounds really scientific, right? But I took the supplement, and after a couple of weeks, and I'm not making this up, my UTIs went away. So I was clearly out of balance, and these two specific strains, with years of scientific studies to back them up, really did the trick for me. And so when I met Antony at the conference, I immediately did one of these overshares where I told him all about my UTI history. Now, Dr. Thomas is a scientist. He was more than happy to have this discussion with me. And it was really fascinating to learn that I had clearly chosen the right product for my health. And after hearing Antony's discussion about probiotic strains, it finally hit home for me. By the way, when we talk about probiotic strains, a strain, this is really important, is generally designated with a combination of letters and numbers after the species and genus. So when you see Lactobacillus rhamnosus, like the one I just mentioned in the product I took, the Lactobacillus is the genus, the rhamnosus is the species, and then the GR1, after Lactobacillus rhamnosus, the GR1 indicates the strain, okay? So, people are often taking probiotics for travelers' diarrhea. You're traveling to another country, you bring a probiotic with you. Or people take probiotics when they're taking antibiotics to restore the good bacteria that they're losing when they're on antibiotics. So we hear about that all the time. And I just shared my story with urinary tract infections. So there's lots of reasons why people are seeking these supplements. So Dr. Thomas is going to give us a really good primer on this episode. So we're really going to get a better understanding of probiotics, whether you're taking them or maybe I have some dietitians listening and you're recommending them. We're going to know a lot more about probiotics after this episode. But when I shared on Facebook that I was doing a podcast on probiotics, I had so many questions that came in. So I decided to actually break this show into 2 parts. In part 1, Dr. Thomas will explain how probiotics work, why knowing about the genus and the species and the strain is vitally important. And I'm also happy to share that one lucky U.S. listener will have the chance to win a bundle of probiotic products from our friends at Jarrow. Over on the show notes from today's episode, number 48, so lizshealthytable.com/podcast, head to show notes 48. You can enter there for a chance to win up to 3 probiotic or prebiotic supplements. Now, in part 2, we will address your questions. For example, why not just eat yogurt? Or how do you know if the product you're buying is legit? Or is there a shelf life for supplements? Another question, is more better? Or are better strains better? And are probiotics okay for kids? You had so many questions, and Antony Thomas has the answers. We have so much to learn, so head to Liz's Healthy Table to the show notes for resources, important links, and again, a chance to win that bundle of 3 Jarrow probiotic and prebiotic products. Liz's Healthy Table is brought to you by my friends at superhealthykids.com, your one-stop shop for recipes, meal plans, cooking videos, and tips for feeding kids of all ages. My show is also brought to you by the Parents on Demand Network. This is an app that's filled with parenting podcasts covering everything from nutrition and feeding kids to pregnancy and raising toddlers. Check out the app and the lineup of shows over at parentsondemand.com. I'm so excited to introduce you to Dr. Antony Thomas in part 1 of our discussion about probiotic supplements. Antony Thomas, welcome to the podcast.
Liz, my pleasure to speak with you today.
So in the intro, I kind of gave everybody the backstory on how we met. I gave them a little bio about you, but just tell us a little bit more about yourself, because this is really a family podcast. So you're a dad. I always have moms on the show, so we need some dad time. So just tell me a little bit about yourself, your son, and give everybody a little bit of the Antony backstory.
Sure. I live currently in the West LA area with my wife and son, who actually just turned 1 year old yesterday.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. I can tell you from my current position with a dietary supplement company and extensive background in nutrition, my son has been on dietary supplements since conception through this day.
That's interesting, because I think a lot of parents are like, my kid doesn't need a supplement, but maybe that should be another podcast. But that's interesting. So he's on supplements. Is he a good eater? Because I know you're a good eater.
He is an amazing eater, and he was actually born 1 month prematurely, yet he is now in the 99th percentile for height and well over the 80th percentile for weight. So no one would ever think he was born a month premature.
Okay, so he's well fed.
Very well fed, yes.
All right, great. So as I've gotten older, Antony, and I know you work at a supplement company, I need to know how I can age backwards. And again, this could be a whole nother episode, but are there really supplements out there, again, a little off topic here, that will help me to age backwards?
I think they're still working on that, on the backwards aging, but there certainly are many ingredients that are looked at for supporting healthy aging and promoting longevity. So that certainly would be another topic. And of course, many people, I think, often overlook some of the simple things like maintaining B vitamin status, or, just taking something like coenzyme Q10 as you age, because your body naturally produces this compound. It's needed to perform required metabolic functions, and yet as we age, our body produces less of it. So you can supplement it back into the diet and bring levels back up in the body to help function. So there are definitely many dietary supplements I would recommend to promote healthy aging and longevity, but as you mentioned, that could be a whole nother topic.
It certainly could. And also, let's not forget about exercise, not a supplement, but I did go to yoga today, so I'm trying very hard. It's like a full-time job. What can I say? All right. So let's talk about probiotics. But before we talk about probiotics, can you just tell everybody a little bit about the microbiome? Because we hear this term bantered about. Everyone says, oh, I need to have a healthy microbiome. What is the microbiome?
Well, it's funny. I think what they're specifically referring to is the microbiota, which is actually the collective microbial community that colonize the various body surfaces on us. And yet, microbiome is specifically referring to their collective genetic material. And sometimes you'll hear the term used as gut microbiome or vaginal microbiome to refer to a specific microbial community. But that's really referring to the collective genetic material of those microbial communities. So microbiome is genetic material. Microbiota is the complex microbial community itself.
Okay, so we're going to talk about that complex microbial community because we have a lot of these microbes that live in us and on us, and we certainly want to be in balance with them, and we want to have a lot of them, I guess. And so we're going to talk a little bit about, those microbes today and the supplements that we can take to help us to be healthier. So we have this microbiota. We have all these bacteria that live in our gut and live on our skin and live all over our bodies, and they're important for our health. What are the health benefits of all these microbes that live in us and on us?
Well, these microbes can influence our health in a variety of ways. They may help us digest food. They actually produce beneficial compounds. They also protect against infection. So we're exposed to many bacteria in our environment as they're the most abundant organisms on this planet. The vast majority are non-pathogenic, but of course we know that not all of them are good guys and cause illness. And so these microbes actually compete for nutrient resources, binding sites on cells within our gastrointestinal tract. And so there's natural competition there. And so they help protect us, and they can also help support our health in a variety of ways, modulating our immune function, influencing digestive health and function. So many ways.
Wow. And even like urinary tract infections. I mentioned at the top of the show before, as I was introducing you, I was talking about how I used to get, all these urinary tract infections. And then I started taking a probiotic supplement, which is how I first heard about Jarrow, because I was taking your Jarrow formula. And suddenly I'm not getting UTIs anymore. And that really kind of blew me away. So why would somebody get UTIs, and why would taking a probiotic supplement suddenly stop the problem?
The vaginal microbiota, unlike the gut microbiota, is predominated by relatively few lactobacillus species. And these bacteria produce acids that acidify the region and limit the growth of other bacteria, including undesirable bacteria. The most common cause for UTIs is uropathogenic E. coli. And so the Ph.D. formula is comprised of two probiotic organisms, both lactobacilli. It's a Lactobacillus rhamnosus, but the specific strain is GR1. And then also a Lactobacillus reuteri, and that specific strain is RC14. Now, these are two of the most well-studied probiotic organisms. They have over 25 years of research, dozens of published clinical trials and in vitro research demonstrating their benefit. And of course, they've been tested and shown to antagonize growth of common vaginal undesirable bacteria, such as E. coli or G. vaginalis and certain Candida yeast species. And so by supporting levels of lactobacilli in this region, it limits the diversity and reinforces lactobacilli and discourages growth of other bacteria. And so this helps maintain a balance within that microbial community and discourages infection.
Wow. So we're talking about probiotics, and I've sort of gotten ahead of myself. Maybe let's back up and just explain for people, or explain to people, like what is a probiotic? Because people go out and they eat yogurt, and they're like me, and they might drink kefir or eat kimchi, these fermented foods, and they think they're consuming probiotics. But what is the real true definition of a probiotic?
Right. So the true definition, now this is internationally endorsed and it's the scientific consensus definition. And it states live microorganisms that, when administered in adequate amounts, confer a health benefit to the host. So there's no legal definition of probiotics. And this allows the marketing and selling of products that don't meet the criteria to use the term appropriately. And so there's actually widespread misuse of the term probiotic. And microorganisms like specific bacterial strains, they're only considered a probiotic for humans when they've been researched and shown to benefit health superior to that of a placebo control in like a well-controlled clinical study. So the majority of fermented foods and products labeled as containing probiotics in the marketplace, they have not been appropriately tested and verified to meet these criteria. Now, they are sources of what we would call beneficial bacteria, and eating fermented foods has a long-standing history of being healthy and supporting digestive health and function. So I would strongly advocate that people consume fermented foods, particularly those containing live active cultures, but it doesn't necessitate that it has a probiotic per se, unless it's been added and verified to be there at an adequate level at the time you consume it. And that level has been shown in research to convey a human health benefit.
Mm-hmm. And what about prebiotics? What are prebiotics?
Right. So you'll often hear prebiotics simply defined as food for probiotics, but that's actually not the definition of those either. Prebiotics are substances that selectively feed microbes that are colonizing our gut, and they confer a health benefit too. So it's selectivity. Again, that's very important. It selectively feeds certain microbes residing within our gut, and by doing so, that produces a health benefit to us.
So we hear about something like inulin, which is a type of fiber. It's found in chicory root and other vegetables, and it's added to different foods as sort of like a fiber. I'm going to use the word supplement, but it's really not a supplement. But if you see inulin on a label, I know that's a prebiotic, right?
Right. So inulin and FOS, or fructooligosaccharides, probably the longest studied quote unquote prebiotic. And they've been shown to enrich bifidobacteria within the colon. And this can result in production of beneficial compounds that support our health.
Now, I eat a lot of fiber-rich foods because fiber feeds bacteria. Are those fiber-rich foods considered a prebiotic, or just it's a fiber-rich food? It's good for me. It feeds bacteria. But it's not like every single fiber food I'm eating has been studied, right? Like beans and, I mean, you name it. I'm eating fiber all day long. So when I say, oh, yeah, the beans I just ate are a prebiotic, unless they've been studied for a specific benefit, I'm sort of misstating it then.
Well, beans are a complex mixture, and of course they're rich in fiber, and most Americans don't consume enough fiber, and certainly many fibers derived from plants, nuts, seeds, they can be fermented by microbes residing within your gut, and most people would benefit by consuming more dietary fiber. Now, not all fiber is fermentable by these bacteria, but they have other benefits in improving intestinal transit, keeping you regular so that you don't become constipated. And these are all benefits.
Okay. But we're still going to eat fiber, people, right? We got to eat fiber.
Oh, people should be eating a lot more fiber in their diets.
That's right. Okay. So different probiotics do different things. We've been talking about the UTIs that I used to get and the probiotics I was taking to ward those off. But how do we know which probiotic does what?
You need to know the strain. That's what links the organism to the research that would support its use as a probiotic for a given health outcome. And these are labeling guidelines promoted by the World Health Organization, the International Probiotic Association, and they state that every probiotic organism within a product should be identified by genus, species, and their unique strain ID. And if it doesn't have that, it's unclear what organism is in there. And if any manufacturer is telling you it's a proprietary blend or they're hiding some special formula, that is absolutely misleading the consumer. There is nothing proprietary about it. The only thing proprietary they may want to be hiding is that it's not an actual probiotic organism or it's not there in sufficient quantity. Mm-hmm.
And in the show notes, by the way, everybody listening, in today's show, we're going to give you a link to the U.S. Probiotics Guide website. So you can go in there and compare what's in your supplement to what's really legit, right? How does that website work, Anthony? How do you go in there and kind of compare what's on the label of the product you're taking and to make sure it's truly a legitimate product?
Right. This is a nice resource to consumers and healthcare practitioners, actually. And it was started by scientists, and they wanted to help summarize certain strains and strain combinations that have been validated for certain aspects of human health. And you can go to usprobioticsguide.com. You could search for probiotics by health indication. So there's a tab for women's health. There's a tab for digestive health. And then within those tabs, you'll see actual brand name products, but it will list the specific probiotic organisms identified to the level of strain in each of those products. It will tell you the quantity in those products. And then, of course, it actually provides references, the scientific references that they have identified to substantiate the use of that specific probiotic or probiotic formula for the given indication.
Okay. Helpful website. Okay, so here's something you said when I met you and when you were speaking at our conference back in Toronto. And you said that more strains, we're talking strains again, more strains are not better, but rather better strains are better. So it kind of sums up what you've been talking about. You can't just be throwing strains at people, right? It's not about all these different strains. It's about what are the best ones out there.
Right. And at that conference in the presentation, I think I used the example of basketball players. And I had a picture of LeBron James, and then I had a picture of, a young child dribbling a basketball and a guy that looks like he's not too good at basketball. And I said, hey, look, if I offered you twice as many of these other ones or even tenfold more, would you pick them for your team or would you pick LeBron James? So humans are all members of the same genus and species. So if we were bacteria, let's say we're all unique strains of Lactobacillus acidophilus, but clearly there's differences between us, both genetically and functionally, right? Mm-hmm. Now, not all humans are considered professional basketball players. And of those that are, many exhibit differences between them in ability to perform various skills, such as dribbling or shooting. So you would likely choose specific members of the human species recognized as professional basketball players, depending on the condition that you're addressing, be it three-point shooting or shot blocking, just as analogies to health conditions, right? Mm-hmm. So this shows that not all strains would be considered efficacious for the particular health outcome that's desired, and even the strains differ with regard to the health outcome.
So better is better, more is not better. I like that. So when people take a probiotic supplement, it has to go through their GI system. It's got to go through your stomach. It's very acidic. And I'm wondering, is it really worth taking those supplements? Because what really ends up way down there in your large intestine? Are those bugs, those good strains, really getting down there? I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here. So convince me that those supplements are really getting where they need to be.
Well, I can't convince you for most of the supplements on the market because I don't know what's in them if they don't identify the strains. I can tell you that quality manufacturers that do identify the specific strains on the label, those organisms are often tested in vitro. So even prior to testing in human studies, when scientists are looking for candidate strains that are meant to be used orally, they know that these organisms need to survive kind of adverse conditions in your gut. So stomach acid, you mentioned, pancreatic secretions, just motility within the upper intestinal tract. These are all natural barriers to restrain colonization by microbes in that region. And so we encounter microbes daily, and not all of them are good, right? We know about foodborne illness. And so just because we're exposed to certain microbes doesn't make us sick. And likewise, just because we consume quote unquote beneficial microbes doesn't mean they survive intestinal transit and get to the colon and convey the benefits that you're hoping they convey. Now, going back to the science, many probiotic strains have been tested for tolerance to things like bile, to acidity, to pancreatic secretions. So that way, once they are brought to human studies, there's a higher likelihood that they'll perform well you'll see products now offering, at least dietary supplements, enteric-coated capsules. Enteric coating does protect against stomach acid, but again, the capsule contents are released in the upper parts of the small intestine, and these microbes still need to transit through the gut and be live and viable and metabolically active to convey the benefits. So there's still bile, there's still pancreatic juices there that can adversely affect their viability and their function. So you really want to make sure you're getting good strains supported by science and not just take any random mishmash of beneficial bacteria. If you're asking about when to take, I would say if you're taking an enteric-coated dietary supplement, it's probably best to take that on an empty stomach because generally when you consume food, that stimulates the secretion of digestive juices, bile, which again can negatively affect viability of the organisms. But if the organisms are not protected in some way against the acidity of the stomach, then I would say it's good to probably take with food, specifically certain foods that might help buffer the acidity in the stomach. Yogurt's great, kefir, dairy, green leafy vegetables. But you generally want to buffer the pH. So when you eat, the pH of your stomach increases, which means the acidity is reduced. And this will help more bacteria survive, transit through the acidic environment of the stomach.
I've always heard that when you take a probiotic supplement, the beneficial bacteria will take up temporary residence in your gut, or let's say in your urinary tract, or wherever it's supposed to go. And that it makes sense to take that supplement every day because it's not like you take the probiotics and those good bacteria then say, hey, I'm going to live here forever. So how does that all work?
They're essentially transient residents. No probiotic organism, as far as I know, has been shown to sustainably colonize the human gut over time. So, which is why you'd have to continuously use the probiotic supplement or intervention to retain the benefit. Because once you cease taking it over time, and it could be from days to weeks, maybe upwards of a month or two, eventually that organism will not be there anymore within the system.
So you're taking these probiotics, and is it the bacteria itself that is beneficial, or are there byproducts of these bacteria that then keep us healthy? So I'm thinking of, I keep getting back to my UTIs, but I'm thinking that maybe those supplements I was taking made the urinary tract more acidic, and that more acidic environment sort of chased away some of those bad bacteria. Am I overstating that?
No, you're absolutely correct. And in fact, the short answer is both are at play. So the metabolites that these organisms produce are often beneficial. And you brought up a good example of lactic acid by vaginal lactobacilli. But within the colon, many probiotic organisms can ferment certain substrates and prebiotics, as we talked about before. And what they produce are what we call short chain organic acids, such as butyric acid or acetic acid. And this will acidify the region. And that's usually not as conducive to the growth of undesirable bacteria. So that can be a benefit. And these organic acids can also have benefits by reinforcing our gut barrier function. It can also be used as energy sources by the cells to support their health. But they also are good in and of themselves. As bacteria, they naturally compete for nutrient resources within a given niche, and they'll produce compounds such as bacteriocins, and these are essentially like personal antibiotics that they produce to kill off other bacteria to help them gain a better foothold, like microbial warfare. So there's this natural competition going on. So the live bacteria is good in and of itself, and it may also have structures on its surface that help its function, but also metabolites that it produces are often part of the benefits received from that probiotic.
Good stuff. So let's say you're a mom or a dad and your kid, it's the winter, is getting sick a lot. So, head colds, cough, you name it, right? And you're just at your wit's end. Should that parent, because, we know certain probiotics are good for the immune system, should that parent go out and look for a probiotic supplement for their child? And is it okay? I mean, I know you talked about your 1-year-old. So is it okay for parents to give kids probiotics? And are there certain products that are just designed for kids?
Well, you brought up my son. My son's been on a very specific probiotic organism since birth that was purposely selected because it so beautifully complements breastfeeding. It was essentially nature's selected probiotic organism for infants, and the organism is called Bifidobacterium longum subspecies infantis, or B. infantis for short. And we use a very specific strain of that organism that's been shown in research to convey various health benefits. But yes, probiotics are safe for infants and children, depending on which ones. I would not give any random probiotic. I certainly wouldn't give some excessively dosed probiotic that just merely provides a mishmash of bacterial species. If the condition that they're looking to address, you said
immunity,
immunity, right? I would look at resources available, such as that clinical guide to probiotic products in the U.S. You can go to usprobioticsguide.com. Look and see which specific strains have research that have been shown to support immune function and health, and look for products that contain that. And I would really encourage consumers and healthcare practitioners to really be proactive. A properly labeled probiotic should have company contact information on it. And I mean, if it cannot fit that information on the label, the minimum should be a website that has that information. And they should be able to contact the manufacturer of a given probiotic product and request scientific evidence to support whatever claim that's being made. So there's many probiotic supplements out there that say immune support, and they may be marketed specifically to children. But the question is, are the organisms in there appropriate? And have they in fact been tested and shown to support immune health? So it's going to take a little bit of work, or maybe use one of these helpful resources like the usprobioticsguide.com to guide you.
So we were talking about kids and immunity, and I have to just tell you that my son Simon, he's 20. I talk about him a lot on the podcast, and he called us up, I want to say 5-6 weeks ago, and he's like, Mom, Dad, I'm sick. I have mono. He's up at college. So he's got mono. So I go into crazy mommy mode and I start sending him all these supplements. And I just met you. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to the store. I'm going to Whole Foods. And I got the Jarrow probiotic supplement. It was for GI and immunity. And I sent it off to him. And I'm like, promise me you'll take this probiotic every day. So for someone like Simon, who really needs that boost, did I do the right thing?
Well, Liz, I can't say for sure. Everybody's microbiota is different. It's highly individualized, but hopefully you'll see a benefit, and certainly let me know if you do see one. But it likely can only help. There's very, very few adverse effects from taking probiotics. And so I'd say the worst case scenario is generally for most otherwise healthy people that it won't get you the health benefit that you're seeking.
Mm-hmm. Well, he is better. So that's good. And he did inform us that he was going skiing this weekend, which means he really is better. Otherwise, he would not have the energy to do that. And we're going to go visit him, so we'll check in for sure. I always wonder, if you're born, let's say, vaginally, and your mother breastfed you, and you've eaten like the best diet ever, and you play outside because, microbes live outside, and you're just doing it all right. Are you really going to need a probiotic, or might you suddenly start, getting urinary tract infections, or start to feel like you're getting colds all the time? Like, what sends us out of balance? Like, why do we even need to take supplements? Because they have all these great health benefits. Why aren't we all just so perfect, Anthony? What's wrong with us?
Well, our environment has a lot to do with it, and it's changed a lot over time. So you brought up examples of vaginal delivery, breastfeeding. We, of course, think those are beneficial. We know that breastfed infants tend to have better brain development, higher levels of certain beneficial compounds in the brain, and cognitive outcomes. There are also lower rates of infection. And this is linked to its role in shaping the gut microbiota, which plays a very important role in actually supporting brain development, maturation of digestive function, and immune function. So these things are all really important. And you talk about playing outside and being exposed to microbes. Well, in the past, and this is what I've heard at many conferences, we kind of viewed bacteria as just, they're all bad, so we just want to get rid of them. And, so here we have a food system where you have animals treated with antibiotics, you have, plants grown with various pesticides, and now we use lots of artificial sweeteners. Our diets have incorporated many more refined nutrients lacking fibers and plant nutrients. And so this, of course, has led to an overall change in the composition and thus function of the microbial communities colonizing our gut. And so We're probably not going to go back to the hunter and gatherer days and things like that, but obviously limiting some of the things that we know might be negative, such as exposure to antibiotics, because they're not selective for bad bacteria. They kill many of the good bacteria too.
Anthony, I learned so much today, and my big takeaway is more is not better, better is better. So I hope everybody learned a lot too, and you're going to be back for part 2 of my probiotic supplement series. So thank you for being on part 1, but you're going to be back next week for part 2. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Liz, it was absolutely my pleasure, and I look forward to our future discussions. And as we like to say here at Jarrow Formulas, probiotic strains matter. That's the hashtag.
Okay, that sounds great. And just a reminder to all of my listeners that we are running a giveaway over at liz'shealthytable.com/podcast, episode 48. And Jarrow is working with me on this awesome giveaway. It's a bundle of probiotic supplements, and the winner will get to choose their top 3 favorites. And so head on over to the show notes from today's show for a chance to enter to win. And this is for my U.S. listeners only. If you liked today's show, feel free to share it with a friend, post a review on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, thanks for listening to Liz's Healthy Table.